Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer podcast. All right, you ready?
I am 100% in. I'm enjoying delicious roast umber coffee.
There we go. Paid shill. I gave him 1,000 SOL before that, which is now worth $7.
Yeah, we're gonna have to deal with this contract more than anything else. Can I get at that USD?
Yeah. Now we're gonna go from instead of being like one SOL, we're gonna be, hey guys, actually, if you look at the USD prices, yeah.
Technically, I don't know about that pegging more than anything else. I'm gonna need. Can you do Canadian dollars? Actually, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't know which currency is currently doing well, but I'll tell you what's not doing well. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're gonna act like everything is glorious. SOL is at all-time high. We're at 200 and.
That whole 2022 bear market, terrible. Really glad that this is filmed in 2024 when everything's infinite money, and I'm still wearing the same hoodie for some reason.
You know, it's actually my favorite part about like the whole NFT space and crypto space in general is that you can look back, and it's not even like you have to wait like 2 years to look back at receipts. Like you can literally look 3 weeks ago and just look at what you were saying 3 weeks ago, and almost everything ages awfully. Like there's always some interesting way to look back and be like, oh man, a month ago I thought this and that was totally wrong. I think even when we got off the last podcast episode, I think I said okay bears will probably be at like 10 by the time we got off this, and it was 27. It's like I wasn't even close.
They got to be at what, like 30 SOL right now probably? Yeah, that'll age perfect. People always come at me and be like, oh man, like what was it like back in the day? And I was like 8 months ago, right? When we were first starting the MonkeDAO and everything like that. So long. Just tell me the stories, Grandpa. What was it like before the candy machine?
Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's like just so often it's like this industry just like gets shit on for a second, and Twitter goes wild for a minute, and it's hilarious. I always enjoy kind of like how much people panic, and we're like, dude, we were just panicking, or we were just elated about these prices, a few months ago, and now we're depressed. Like it's crazy how quickly things change just by it can be the same price point, but we all get used to where the all-time high was instead of thinking about where we were, even a year ago.
Oh, a year ago when we were at 30,000 BTC exactly in May, and now we're just like acting like the world's ending. It's like, well, it's just the same price point. We've had fluctuations up and down since then, but like 30K BTC is pretty great considering, I was someone who lost a lot from 20K BTC. So 30,000 is fantastic. I'm very happy to see it.
Yeah. But we get too much into when things are going well, everyone starts throwing crazy prices, like we're going to hit 100,000 Bitcoin tomorrow. It's like
my pixelated monkey is worth $1 million and not 1 cent less. Guarantee it. It'll happen at some point.
Do you have a year estimate on that?
2050 maybe, something like that, when the US dollar like fully deflates and I can just ask any amount that I want for it, will be perfect.
Exactly. So all right, so we got to start off this podcast with addressing kind of the obvious. So I actually still have to figure out, and by the time this podcast comes out, people will know what the title is. But the title of these podcast episodes has been Solana Founder Series, right? Okay. And so you are not the founder of Solana Monkey Business, no. But yet you are here today talking about it. And so I want to break down kind of who you are, what is Solana Monkey Business, what is the MonkeDAO, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand that at all. So let's start with, and by a lot of people, I mean myself, okay? I'm going to be completely honest, but let's start off with kind of who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll roll into everything from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So to go to the full audience. So I'm Nam. I'm one of the co-founders of the MonkeDAO, which is essentially the social group that's been built around the Solana monkey business NFT. So we focus basically as a bunch of holders around what we want to do for events, marketing, collaborations, all the way from developing the infrastructure that exists in Solana to improving, the overall education, trying to provide content to people, to throwing IRL events, working with organizations like the Solana Hacker Houses, just being a great group of people online who are busy developing the next generation of projects.
Okay, so before you got into Solana Monkey business, what was your background with NFTs?
So my background with NFTs, so I originally came from Ethereum. I was a Solidity developer in 2019, 2020. But I came into specifically Solana in March of 2021 when I had a friend reach out to me and say, hey, we're doing some really cool things with Rust. You might want to check it out. So I come from a computer science background. I was like, perfect. I'll just teach myself Rust. Didn't happen, was not great. So I very much came into Solana as like an early enjoyer, someone who wanted to be a part of the ecosystem, who wanted to check out, NFTs and wanted to check out Solana prices. I got in on Cope, which is one of the original coins that was just like focusing on providing people a ton of value through airdrops and access to new projects. And so through that, I got access to a couple of NFTs. I was lucky enough to mint Creatures, which was the first NFT project on Solana. I was involved in minting Solarians, which is the first kind of generative, what we would refer to now as like traditional NFTs. And through that, I found out about SMBs just through Discord's friends, people who are just like, you should really check out this monkey project. I think it's going to do really well. They have a lot of people behind it. And so minted that project. We had a bunch of things go wrong with the initial mint, which was fantastic to look back on now to see like what people are complaining about in terms of like mint qualities or like how launches go compared to what we had originally. And then I just got involved in the ecosystem in a big way for monkeys specifically, just trying to help organize, provide tooling, developed a few small tool sets that people really wanted, and then I moved realistically into the governance community organization side.
So you got into Solana NFTs basically way before most people, because I feel like when I talk to most people, they're like, I got into it in October. Like, it seems like everybody got into it right around the fall time of 2021. And so you started kind of learning about Rust and everything like that in March 2021. So what was, when you got your first NFT, your first Solana NFT, what was the community aspect like? And what was like the whole space like back then? Because I feel like, I don't know if I've met really anybody that talks about what it was like back then, because I feel like almost everybody was, fall was right around when they got into it. So what was it like back then?
Yeah, I think like Squid Dude, for example, is probably the best person to talk about that, because he was directly contacted by Metaplex building like the first NFTs on Solana, what that was looking like. Obviously, same thing with Redacted J and the people who are building the actual Metaplex standard. So they'd be way better people to interview and kind of talk through about that. But for me personally, it was just a community of developers and artists. Like at the very core, like there was no marketing, branding, utility. Like no one was doing tokenomics. Everyone was just like, this is cool art. Okay, how do I mint this and sell this on the blockchain? Okay, what do I have to do in order to get this? What do attributes have to look like? How do I code royalties properly in terms of any of this? It was very like, you could take the information that you learned from Ethereum NFTs and from stuff like NBA Top Shot and the rare Pepe cards before that, like the original ideas of what NFTs were supposed to be, and obviously you had learnings from that, but it was still a very early part of the ecosystem where people were still trying to figure stuff out, and that just continued to improve. And I wish I had held on to a lot more of those things realistically, even just because of like, not necessarily because of price movement, but just like the historical value of like having one of the first NFTs on a blockchain. I think it was just something that would be awesome to be holding on to. And so people look at stuff like SMBs or DJ Apes as like the first NFTs, and that's not really true. But those are just like the first ones that made kind of I guess you would call it like retail or commercial success, where it really onboarded a lot of people and made Solana, I think, a larger chain in a lot of people's eyes, specifically because of the NFT community.
Yeah, I feel like that for me that's kind of how I got into NFTs, was hearing about Solana Monkey business and that being like one of the big projects, and people, bringing it up all the time and kind of looking at that as like I know people hate this comparison, but like the Bored Apes of Solana. I felt like at that time, that's kind of how I compared it to, because I feel like when I got into NFTs, Solana Monkey business was already pretty high, right? It was like, I feel like it was like 300 floor back then.
Yeah, so we probably had our largest hype spike right before Breakpoint, as did most people at that time, where we had one monkey equal to more than one Bitcoin. Great 3 days. Really wish we could go back to that every once in a while. But yeah, probably like 300 floors. So we had a lot of the like punks of Solana, Bored Apes of Solana comparisons thrown around, which realistically wasn't our message or what we were trying to do. It's obviously flattering and you take all the positive press that you can get, but it wasn't realistically like our goal to copy something else. We viewed ourselves a lot more in terms of like what the Proof Collective had done, what organizations like Friends with Benefits or People Pleaser had been working on, just in terms of like organizing community activation around a specific purpose. That was always our goal. We weren't necessarily trying to be a lifestyle brand. I think now we're trying to be a little bit more of a specifically like a brand focused around community and education and infrastructure. But at the time, we were just monkey enjoyers and people who really realistically just wanted to help the space out in any way that we could.
So let's go back to, when did you get your first Solana Monkey business? This was back, do you remember right around the time?
So August 3rd was the mint date for the Generation 2 SMB, which is what most people refer to whenever they're calling the SMB. There was a couple of iterations before that, which we can get into as well. But the Gen 2 mint was August 3rd, 2022, or 2021. Jeez.
Time flies.
I thought we were still doing the bit where it was 2030 and I had infinite money. My bad. Just hopium from me. But so I went into that mint, and so it's 2 SOL mint. It wasn't like you hit a button or anything like that. Like, it was legitimately just sending SOL to a contract address and hoping that you would get anything back in return. And so I sent them off. There was actually like an RPC node issue that the original team was dealing with, where we had essentially had a congestion for the contract that was running in the background that was taking the pre-minted monkeys and sending them out. And the problem with that was all of the original people who like hit the 5,000 mint early, like something like 2,000 NFTs were just like clogged. Like they weren't getting sent out to people who were looking for them. So a lot of people, myself included, went into the Discord and were just like, what's going on? Why did you take my money? Where is this going on? Like, I sent $70 in that mint. Where did that go? and the whole team was just dealing with that in the background, and credits to them for what they actually managed to pull off, because 3-4 hours later, people started receiving the new batches of NFTs. So it wasn't the original group of people who had minted it. It was all the new people who were minting like the 2,000 to 3,000 range. And so a bunch of people, myself included, saw that happen. We're just like, oh, well, now people are getting their monkeys. I better just slam the mint button again, because we didn't learn from the initial thing. We were just like, well, now people get monkeys. I better just throw money into the abyss and hope that I get something back. And so it was a great Discord to be a part of. And it was honestly something that I've only seen happen like 1 or 2 times. Like, now when you see mints either sell out through like whitelist projects, or if they're a hype mint, they sell out instantly more than anything else. So it'd be hard to recreate that, just because it was like, 6 to 12 hours of just like people talking in one Discord only, and just like the amount of time slow mode got implemented, or we had to create different channels, or people went off to different group chats to talk about things, or like people got like temp banned or time out or anything like that. Like, it was such a great moment in time of just like everyone just trying to mint these monkeys. And there was like 200-300 of us, I think, that interacted with the contract address. Like, there wasn't that many people, but we are all trying to get involved and be a part of this.
I think that's the funniest part about NFTs is we talk about like back in the day all the time, right? And when we say back in the day, I mean, even like I was acting like it was forever ago that you got into NFTs, and that was a little over a year ago, right? And then we say back in the day, and when it comes to Solana, often that means like the fall, right? Which, once again, not that long ago. But yeah, that's actually something I miss about back then, was the way mints went back then was so different than it is now. And oh man, I love the feeling of like a good mint back in like October was, you would either have one that didn't mint out right away, but then still would end up mooning. Like, now if a project doesn't mint out, it's kind of like, that project's probably screwed. But back then it was like, there was just a completely different atmosphere around minting. And I used to always love when you would have like 7 tabs on your computer and you're just pressing mint on all of them and just hoping to get one of them. And now it's like, it's all whitelist, and you got to have whitelist, or you basically have no shot of getting that to begin with. But man, I miss the good old mint days of October.
Oh, it's when you had like auto approve set on Phantom, and you're like, all right, I preloaded the website address into as many of these as possible. I've got like 2 laptops set up, ready to go. And it's like, I'm just going to click through all of these on the burner wallet hopefully it works out. And it's like, that doesn't exist anymore, realistically. Oh. And, you know, that was a great time, but that was when only degens were getting like, we're realistically being able to mint these projects. Like, it wasn't, one of the things that the whitelist meta did really good is that it allowed people who, you know, either through connections or through grinding the whitelist or anything around that, which, you know, it can be a positive or a negative thing depending on who you are and who you're talking to. It allowed a lot of people to get access to mint one of something, right? Like, not necessarily go back to the point where you're minting like 10 or 20 or 30 of a thing, which, while it's nice for the person who's on the minting side, isn't necessarily the best for the community as a whole.
Yeah, completely. So, okay, so I want to get into Solana Monkey business is one where I feel like most people, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand, typically when I'm doing research for a podcast conversation, I go onto YouTube and I type in whatever project and I'll watch other people's videos and just kind of see what people are talking about, see if there's questions that they bring up that I would like to know the answer to, or see if they can explain the project really well so then I can come up with questions based off that. When I typed in Solana Monkey business, I couldn't find really anything. I couldn't find anybody really deep diving the history of Solana Monkey business. And it's one that even when I first came into contact with you, I didn't really understand what your role was with Solana Monkey business. I didn't really understand what the DAO does. And because typically when you talk about a project, you know who the founders are, you know who the kind of the core team is and everything like that. And you look to the founders to kind of announce the big things that are happening with that project and everything like that. Solana Monkey business is one that's completely different. So the MonkeDAO has an incredible level of importance, way bigger than pretty much any other DAO. And so can you kind of explain, I guess, a little bit of the back history of Solana Monkey business and kind of what happened back then that brought us to where we're at now with it?
Yeah, so the easiest way to go into it, that I think maybe if you're coming from the Ethereum side of it, is that we have a lot more of like a Larva Labs relationship with our developers. So the devs had their original roadmap, they released the Gen 2 SMB, they worked on building the marketplace, and they had a few other things in the work that they were going to build out. But they didn't necessarily want to do, like, you have to understand this in the context, whereas like this is legitimately a time period where you could just launch a PFP project and walk away, and that was fine. Like, that was not this like soft rug, hard rug mentality that people have now. That's something that's, 3 months old, right? It's not necessarily from that point in time. So the devs launched a project, had a roadmap, wanted to, build out some more things around their marketplace, which is, a feeless marketplace, which is great for anybody who's trying to trade monkeys. You're not giving an extra 2-3% to anyone on the back end. You're just paying like the original royalties. But that kind of way where they were just like, okay, next up we're going to work on merch and a couple other things, but they weren't their goal wasn't to like interact with the community on a day-to-day basis. And what ended up happening was a lot of us got involved just through OTC chats. So the other side of it, we didn't get listed on the only marketplace that existed on Solana at the time, which is Solana Art. They were very much focused on the DJ mints, which was a week later. And so they were just like, if we're going to hype up like one monkey specific project, they chose DJ Apes and not Solana, who was already, or not SMB, who was already focused on building their own marketplace, which makes sense. It's a smart business decision. You can't fault that in any way. So all of the initial transactions that were going on at that point in time after the mint was purely over the counter trading. And a lot of that just went on in Discord chats. So you had like, well, I would get to the point where it's like, okay, well, I trust this person. They can be my middleman. We can do a trade where it was like, I'll give you 3 SOL for this monkey. Let's make this happen. And what that turned into over the course of like 2 weeks was all of these people, until the release of the marketplace, just had this web of trust that was consistently growing. It was like, okay, well, I know this person because they middleman for me for this trade, and they vouch for this person, so I can do that. And we essentially just fractured into so many different group chats and conversations and other Discords where we got to the central group of like 60 people. And from that, we essentially consolidate everyone in there. It was like, okay, we've got, some incredible Solana developers. We have great artists. We have a bunch of people who have worked in previous NFT projects or have some experience, which was rare at the time. And all of these people kind of came together, and we're just like, okay, well, the devs are busy working on their marketplace and they have their own roadmap. And it's like, a lot of us are probably over-invested in monkey pictures at this point in time, or we just love the community, we love the friendship or anything around this. And we said, okay, well, let's make kind of a collective that the whole goal is just to like talk about monkeys, work on minting other projects, like focus on improving the technology stack, or just doing something productive for the ecosystem. Because we were at the point where there was, 7 to 10 days in between mints. Like there was time after you finished one project to go on to another project. And what we wanted to do essentially was just like, let's make a group that is dedicated around like making SMBs work. Like, let's make a group that's focused around the advances of Monkey. And that's where MonkeDAO came from. So myself and a couple of others stepped up in just like leadership organizational roles. Like, I came in as someone who just like organized meetings. I took notes. I built a couple of like scrapers for Solarians, rarity data back in the day when they had their own marketplace, which is a dark time. And I don't want to go into the dev work that needed to happen for that. But essentially what we were doing was we just had a bunch of people who were very motivated and wanted something to do in the ecosystem and wanted to provide, some sort of value or give back in some way or make something. And we were just like, let's make a proper DAO on Solana, which, there were a couple like Mango, and the Solians was another project that was starting up around that time, which had proper DAO governance, in my opinion, and just like had a good workflow. But we were just like, let's make an NFT DAO on Solana that actually makes sense and actually does something and is working on it. And, a lot of that was because our developers were focused on making the marketplace, and that was their goal. They weren't necessarily looking to engage with us. You didn't have this one central project leadership that was trying to do things. And we were just like, well, why don't we do it? We're the people who hold the project. We're the people who invested in this. Let's make our own destiny. And that's kind of where MonkeDAO came from. And then for myself, I went from someone who was like taking meeting minutes to having a little bit more on the idea of just like, okay, well, I'll set up like the votes, right? And like, okay, now we can vote on these things through Discord. Oh, we need a Discord bot. We need more upgrades into that. And then I just developed into essentially a group of 5 of us, ended up getting this title called MonkeDAO, which we essentially made with the community of just like, okay, these are 5 people who have the best interest of the community, give them a little bit of power and organizational capacity while everyone else goes off and starts making their own projects, starts making their own thing. Let these people start to run MonkeDAO, and, let the other people continue to do the great things for the ecosystem, which was the goal from the entire start, is like, just get a group of really talented, dedicated people together, improve the ecosystem, work on governance, and, just make cool shit. Like that was it.
What was your conversation like with the founders at the time? Did you guys have to so if the DAO decided something, did you have to run that by the founders and be like, is that cool with you guys? Or how did that work?
Yeah, I'd love to say that it was like harmonious at all points in time. At the start, I don't think they noticed that we had really started a DAO, to be honest with you. Until they actually put out the marketplace, I don't think they were paying that much attention to what we were doing inside the community. And by the time that we had established ourselves, they were just like, oh, okay, there's already this community organization going on. Perfect. It developed. It's really strong. Price action was good. And everyone seems to like this MonkeDAO idea. And so now we're at a lot more point where we talk with the developers. We've been talking with them weekly ever since the mint on behalf of MonkeDAO and on behalf of the community. And we've wanted to make sure that like, if they want to do something or if the DAO wants to do something, we're at least aligned. We don't have to, work hand in hand the entire time, but at least have like some representation of, we're working together for the benefit of Monkey and SMB holders in total, right?
Do you think they'll ever try to, and I guess this is a hard question to answer because it's purely speculation, but do you think they'll ever try to take more control back in the project? Because technically at the end of the day, they are the founders of the project, but you guys have been the ones who have built it to what it is. So it's a weird, there's a weird gap there, right? So do you think they'll ever try to take more control of the project, or do you think they're kind of cool with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we had a whole contentious argument about royalties and marketing, and it's the classic founders debate of just who did what, who did most important thing, and we agreed on essentially a royalty split of just okay, MonkeDAO is helping work on the SMB brand. They get partial compensation through royalties that are going through the sales. The team gets the other portion of the royalties, and it's okay, so now we both have an incentive mechanism where it's Monkey price go up, Monkey sales happen. We're working together for the same sort of thing. They've added 3 new hires to their team recently over the last couple of months, which are focused, on improving the marketplace, improving the NFT metadata, providing some more utility to the project, and, just working on general branding. And I think we're going to work a lot more closely together. We don't necessarily want to take over the entire project. There was a whole sub-faction. I don't even know if that's the right term. There was a group of people who were just start your own project and do your own thing. It was well, that wasn't really our goal from the start. It was just we never wanted to do a hostile takeover, for lack of a better words. And, I don't think the developers want that either, right? They wanted to continue to work on their project. I'd like for us to continue to work really close together with them. I think they made something incredible that just captivated like the entirety of the Solana ecosystem and made a really, really strong brand. I think that, we can just continue to work together on promoting that brand as much as possible. What that ends up looking like, I don't know. But to be honest with you, I didn't think I would be talking about the economics of monkey governance 7-8 months ago.
Yeah. What a wild world.
Yeah. As much as we can, like, I think MonkeDAO and the SMB devs, I think both want the exact same things. We might be approaching it a little bit differently just in terms of what we're trying to do, but that's just an incentive difference between like decentralized systems and centralized systems. It's just like the way that people go about certain things.
So how did it come about that you guys started to get a royalty to help kind of fund the DAO? Because obviously you guys started the DAO basically on your own, and you said that they kind of realized like at some point, okay, they've already gone and built this. So when did, I guess, like those conversations go? And yeah, I mean, how ugly did it get?
Well, that one's kind of on me. So there was a lot of these conversations I was going through where it was just like, okay, the DAO's doing all of these things, the developers are doing these things, which one's more important? Where's the value generation arriving? When you go from 2 SOL mint to 320 SOL or whatever we ended up hitting as our peak, like how much of that is based off of MonkeDAO and how much of that is based off the core IP? And so people have opinions on where value lies, especially in cryptocurrency and the NFT ecosystem, and that was a hot debate. And one of the things that I did was specifically like part of why I want to do more podcasts and more like public outreach is I put out a Twitter thread, which was just a compilation of publicly available information on like where royalties go, where the structure happened, what the mint was like, everything around what we've been talking about so far. And that sparked a lot of conversation where people were just like, oh, well, why doesn't MonkeDAO get paid? Like, why are we not paying people who are in charge of MonkeDAO? Why are they working for free? All of these different things. It was like, that started a massive conversation, which went through pretty much the entirety of February, I would say, for 2022. And that ended up just like, we went into legitimate negotiations with the development team. And we said, okay, we are happy to do marketing and promotion and events and merchandise and all of these different things. And it was like, just, help us out with some of the royalty percentage and we can keep working on that. And things get ugly and people say things on Twitter. People love commenting, especially from other projects, on what should be happening or what shouldn't be happening in certain parts of the ecosystem. So that probably got a little bit out of hand, and where I think most people might have gotten more aware of SMB was necessarily from that fallout or that conversation between SMB and the MonkeDAO, but it all resolved itself by the end of February, and I think it's continuing to move forward where now MonkeDAO is a really good MonkeDAO is a really good revenue structure and a decent like royalty opportunities to continue to improve what we're offering to the ecosystem, make sure that we're able to continue to work in the best way possible for SMB holders, and to, just continue to represent governance for the ecosystem as a whole. I don't necessarily want to have everything just go 100% smoothly all the time, right? Like if we have a governance system or, some way of trying to represent 2,600 people at any point in time, and we just always agree on things consistently, that is a very good sign that we're not paying attention. Like I'm a very big fan of just like 10th man style of conversations through like that, where, if 9 people in a room agree on something, it's the job of the 10th person to find a dissenting opinion or to at least like bring up problems on, why we should be doing anything, right? It's like it's important to have dissent and conversation and discussion. That's the entire point of, democracy and discourse. Is it always the best thing? Is it always comfortable? Is it always, a nice, big, happy family? No, not necessarily, but we're trying to build like proper democratic governance on what's going on inside of MonkeDAO. And a lot of that happens with conflict. That's where things get resolved and that's where things get aired out. And I think we're continuing to move forward and continuing to improve, what it means to have an SMB, what it means to be a part of MonkeDAO, what those brands represent in Solana and in the broader ecosystem.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's an interesting setup because in most projects, you kind of like if you hold a project, you don't have too much of a voice in the project, right? Like in the grand scheme of things, for the most part, like the founders kind of do their thing and you hope that you picked a project that has founders that you agree with on most things. But yes, there are votes in some projects and things like that, but when you're, I guess, a Solana Monkey business holder, you have way more power, I guess, in the direction of that project than most. And so I feel like that's probably where some of the Twitter discourse comes from, because I feel like every once in a while there's a hot subject with Solana Monkey business that goes over to Twitter. And up until recently, just you and I started chatting, I was like, I don't really get everything that, like, there's some drama going on there, but I don't really get what's going on. But I feel like in hindsight, it like makes more sense because of the fact that there is, if you're a holder in that project, you have a way larger voice than you typically do in most projects. And so if somebody doesn't agree, then they tend to just, hey, I'm going to say it really, really loud and hope that the majority of everybody in this agrees with me, and maybe I can change the direction of the project. While in most projects, you can go on Twitter and bitch, it's not really going to change anything. With Solana Monkey business, you actually have a chance of changing how things go because everybody has a voice in the project. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there's the easy phrase in capitalism of just like the only power you have is voting with your wallet. You either buy something or you sell it, right? Like that's all that you can do to influence. Like Coca-Cola is not going to listen to me, right? Like regardless of whether or not I buy or sell, because they're just this massive organization. We are incredibly lucky in MonkeDAO, I think, where not only do we have a bunch of people who are really dedicated to like trying to do the right thing, love the NFTs, want to hold on to it, love meeting up with other holders IRL and continuing to work on projects with them online, but we have a very passionate, dedicated community that is more than happy to talk about anything and everything. And sometimes it spills out onto Twitter or other methods, and it's not pretty, it's not necessarily the most productive of conversations, but I will always take people who are passionate and interested in something over people who are just like, they got it, they'll be fine, don't worry about it, right? Like that's not what we're trying to do here. We want to make sure that we're continuing to move in the right direction and that we're aligned with what everybody wants. Like we don't want to get to the point where it's like people feel like we're not listening to them,
right?
But we want to make sure that it's like, even if there's a bunch of people with SMBs who have very loud voices who are happy to use those voices to express their opinions. And I appreciate that because, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? It's good to have people talking about the project. But I want to make sure that it's like, regardless of whether or not you're like, if you have no followings, if you have infinite number of followers, any number, like whatever that is, I want to make sure that you feel like in MonkeDAO, right, your voice is being heard because you have a monkey and that you have an option to just like, I want to vote for or against this thing, and that actually matters. You're not being drowned out by somebody else who has a lot larger voting share or anything like that. And that's what we're trying to do, and that's the system of governance that we're trying to build. Still have work to do, right? Full honesty. If I had a perfect system, I would be selling it to the U.S. government of like, here's how you should fix democracy. Yeah. I don't. We're still working on it, and we're going to continue to work on it. I'm, incredibly lucky to have a really smart board of people on MonkeDAO who spend an unbelievable amount of time every single day talking about the governance of pixelated monkeys on the Solana blockchain. It's amazing how much effort the people are willing to put into this, and like brilliant people. Like it'd be one thing if we were just like degens who had nothing else better to do the entire day and we started a project and we want to do governance there. But it's like, I have people who, have run massive businesses. We have people who are incredible financial managers, 3 lawyers, which I was not expecting, who have like an actual understanding of what securities are in the United States, that are not Twitter educated on what it means to be a security. And then myself, who does not have any of those qualifications, but I just like talking about governance and the way that people interact with technology.
Hey, I feel that. I'm like, there's times I'll be in a Twitter space listening to some people talk, and I'm like, man, you guys are talking about some shit that's so far above my head. I'm like, the only thing I know is that I'm supposed to say, as we're doing these podcasts from time to time, this is not financial advice. Do whatever the hell you'd like, and don't take advice from me. That's the only thing I know I'm supposed to say, but I'm like, I don't even know who's supposed to give a shit about whether I say that or not. But it's super interesting, the different voices that are in this space and how many people come from various different backgrounds and what their actual knowledge is in various different things. And it's a very, very interesting way of looking at, like, comparing it to the real world of like how you guys are governing a MonkeDAO compared to how like a US government works or how another country's government works. And it's like, it's a really interesting thing when you break it down and think about it. And so one of the things that you talked about was like the passion behind the DAO and everything like that. So if I have this correct, from when you guys minted it in August to February, you guys weren't receiving any funds, right?
No. Nothing. So we had a couple of like projects that had launched, which was a Monkey Baby business and the Monkettes. So both of those were member projects where they just airdropped a certain amount to people who were holding monkeys. They gave us a percentage of their otherwise secondary mint as just like, this is a homage, a derivative, anything around that. And some of those went into the DAO treasury, and obviously we had donations from certain members to just like pay for server infrastructure costs to run a website or to run various things that we were organizing. But yeah, we weren't receiving anything from the like primary sales of SMBs.
So what was the major, like what kept you guys all motivated at the time? Was it because the floor price was just really high, or like, and everybody just wanted to pump their own bags, or was it like what, I guess, got people to be so passionate about it?
I think like a lot of it had to do with the amount of people like very early on who were just happy to, like, when the JPEG was worth nothing, they were happy to work on it and happy to work around like everything monkey related. And I think we did a very good job of curating the community and the leadership early on to people who just like, regardless of whether or not they were getting paid, we're happy to work and we're happy to organize things. And we kept that spirit the entire time. So it's like, once people served on like our board for a term and then went and, had offers to go work in other places, a lot of them ended up taking it, right? Some people went and launched their own projects. Some people, went off to go work for other companies. Some people, just continued to work on the board. But we never had a situation where people were just like, okay, we need to be financially motivated. Like, when's our payout going to be? What is anything around that? We're having those conversations now where it's like, we've had, hundreds of people in MonkeDAO who have been active contributors, and that's anything from repping a monkey on Twitter to, doing organizational stuff for votes, to taking minutes on town halls, to, organizing Twitter spaces. Like, all of that's very important and should be measured in some way, shape, or form around like what it means to have made up part of the success of MonkeDAO. And we're working through like how we reward people for those past contributions, which is one of the things that now we're currently arguing about on Twitter and then Discord. I really want to make sure that people are getting paid for the value that they're creating, because I think that's one of the primary goals of like what people say for crypto or Web3 is like, you own the product of your labor rather than renting it out to another organization. I want to make sure that like, regardless of whether or not people are just making memes in Discord, like that adds value to a project, right? And if the floor price goes up, that holder is not necessarily rewarded for the value of like what they're making in any way, shape, or form. I want to change that where they can be a part of a DAO, and whatever they're creating, they get a percentage of whatever the value of the DAO is. What's the value of the DAO? That's a hell of a question that I don't have an answer to right now, but we're working on figuring that out right now as part of our daily conversations.
So I think a lot of people will find this part of things, I guess, interesting, is the structure of things is obviously, it almost kind of reminds me, and I could be wrong here, but like when a project gets like derugged, right? And leaders of a project kind of say like, hey, we're gonna take the power back of this project. You guys are not a rug, so obviously it's not completely the exact same, but in that mentality of people who are trying to derug a project, they all, gang up together and kind of say, hey, we're gonna do this for like the good of the project and everything like that. It seems like you guys have a similar mentality of like, we're not, once again, your project is not a rug, but the group having that similar mentality of like, we all want the best for this project. And while we know that the founders are working on this marketplace, we're going to kind of all gang up together and like work for the good of this project. And I feel like that energy is a really hard thing to create. And like, you guys were able to create that. And so as you guys have gone about things from, August to, or when exactly did the DAO structure begin?
So the start of the MonkeDAO was August 25th, 2022.
Wow, you got all your dates down.
I got those down, except for the year, which I keep messing up.
Hey, it's all good.
The days are going successful. We've changed kind of our methods of governance a couple of times since then. So we've had kind of like, we view them as like board epochs almost of just like time. But yeah, the start of the DAO was August 25th.
Okay, so that was actually my question. So from August 25th till now, how has the DAO structure changed, and what do you think I guess caused it to change?
Yeah, so the DAO structure by itself, like the initial way that we were doing it was just like, all right, we got 50 OGs in the Discord, perfect. Those people are going to be making the decisions, and we find projects that we want to do, like organizing merchandise or anything around that, like setting up websites, organizing infrastructure, making educational materials. And we're just like, oh, perfect. People can just take projects and run with it. We're going to do this full like anarcho, not organized, like fully autonomous way. It was like, all right, a couple months of that happened, and we're like, we really did not get that much done in 2 months of just like people running with the projects, because there's no oversight. There's no like necessarily, people were taking the time that they had and working on things that they wanted to work on, right? And like, that's great. We wanted that. But we weren't necessarily like succeeding as much as I think we could have if we had been a little bit more centralized of a structure. So then we entered kind of what I call like the MonkeDAO era, which is where myself, Jemmy Jim, RP, Solana Legend, and Celon all took on a little bit more leadership opportunities. And we said, okay, well, let's take what we've done previously. We'll all take a little bit more ownership of all of these. We'll start, following up and setting up a little bit of like organizational structures. And from there, let's keep working on stuff. And that was great. But that was kind of the period of time where, SMB and the MonkeDAO got a lot of recognition. And a lot of the people very early on had opportunities to go work at various other organizations or had the opportunity to go start their own project. And we suffered from a lot of brain drain, a lot of talent drain. And that's nothing against the people who left to go do their other things. They were still active in MonkeDAO, but their attention was elsewhere because God forbid people make money with their time, right? Like,
What a concept.
That's totally fair. And, we wanted to encourage that and we wanted to support it, but we also were just like, okay, this isn't sustainable. 2 out of the 5 monk kids ended up leaving to go work on their own stuff more than anything else. So the people who were remaining were taking on way too much responsibility. And, we were working 80, 100-hour weeks of just like, a lot of it, right, is sitting in Discord, talking to people, organizing things, having meetings, working on partnerships. But all of that like soft skill time, as well as like the technical side of things of what we were trying to work on, that all adds up. And that becomes an incredible amount of like just mental exhaustion from being on constantly working on a project, especially when you're not getting paid and you're just like, okay, I also got to trade, 10, 20 hours a week to, mint all these NFTs. Cause that was October where everything was just going up. So it's like, if I was not looking at projects to mint and I was actively losing money, which was terrible. Right. So we got to the point where it was like, okay, we need more structure. Otherwise everyone's just going to burn out and this isn't going to work. So we designed a system of governance where we're just like, all right, there's 8 committees. These are the central things from finance to merchandise to website, like that we think we need to focus on at the DAO. We're going to hold elections, 2 people in charge of each committee. Everyone who owns an SMB is eligible. And all we did was just like 1 week, set it up where if you wanted to run, perfect. Tell us a little bit about yourself, why you like monkeys, what you want to do. Perfect. And then we had a 1 week of just like conversation. Everyone was allowed to discuss the candidates. We had a vote. And then we set up our first board of 16 people. I was like, is 16 too large of a board? Maybe, but we needed it, right? Like we tried small centralized governance where a couple of people were making all the decisions. Did not work. Just full honesty.
Yeah.
And then we expanded it and we put people in charge of things that we thought they could succeed at. And that's where a lot of our successes really went. The initial committee structure that we set up, where it was like 2 people in charge of one thing, was bad. We initially set that up so it was like we would have 24-hour uptime on like something like finance if anything came up on like treasury management, right? Or so that if someone was always available to check on the website or people were always available to do development. We changed that a little bit in our next epoch of governance where we're just like, okay, now we have like committees that you're working on and we just have more people who are in charge of more committees, but now it's not like one person's the lead and other people are still working on things. Just because if you have 2 people who are in charge of one thing, there's always going to be miscommunication. There's always going to be a problem of who do I go to? How do I talk to that person? Which wasn't how we initially thought it was going to work out, but that's just how implementation worked. And we pride ourselves on like, maybe we're slower than a centralized ecosystem where it's one person just like handing out assignments, but we were able to quickly adapt. And so we run on 3-month governance epochs, essentially, where it's just like, okay, didn't necessarily work out the perfect way in epoch 1. Let's fix it for epoch 2. Okay. And then in epoch 2, we said, this is working a little bit better. We need a little bit more project management structure. Now we have incoming royalties. We have incoming funds. We need to organize it so that we have, things dedicated like a specific marketing budget. We have a specific community budget that we're working on. We have money specifically for merchandise, right? What does that all look like? How do we allocate for event management, everything around those sides? And so we're just trying to continually iterate every 3 months. We improve in each epoch, but it's like we have one objective of getting better in each board epoch. And that's what the major team works on. And so most of those board members work, 40-hour weeks minimum just for free in addition to everything else that they're currently doing, and they do a great job. And that's just because there's a lot of things to do to help manage this DAO, because most DAOs are payment protocols or banks. If you look at MakerDAO or, the DAO, the original one that everything kind of gets its name from on Ethereum, like that was put money in, get money out, right? It was a purely like code-based ecosystem where it was just like, okay, I'm going to put something in, it does it, whatever in DeFi, and then I can take money out later on. There wasn't a human element. There wasn't things to go on. You saw a lot of that happen with kind of the sushi swap, dynamic, where the creators of sushi didn't necessarily have all the controls. There was a lot of problems where the people who were holding the sushi token had a lot more leadership, and like the human element is where a lot of DAOs fall apart, and that's where we're specifically putting a lot of our focus on, is like, how do we make it so that people in this organizational structure are able to effectively, like, not only be people who can be replaced, because eventually, you don't want key man risk. You want everyone to eventually be able to move on or do something else if they need to. But also that people are empowered, that they don't feel like they're completely replaceable, where, I'm trusted to do a job on a day-to-day basis. And those are hard problems, right? Those are problems that corporations, which have a 400-year lead time on, DAOs, are still working to solve on a day-to-day basis right now. And so that's what we're working on, and that's where we spend a lot of our time. Is like, how do we make a good example of a quality DAO?
I think it's incredible what you guys are doing, because I think that makes a lot more sense. Like I told you before, like I didn't really understand completely what MonkeDAO was doing and what you guys, the whole setup of it and how it came to be, and what, power you guys had and what you didn't have. And now, hearing more of like how it started and everything like that, I think it's awesome to see how many people are super passionate about the project and wanted to put in that crazy amount of time without getting paid for something. Anytime anybody puts work into something and you're not being paid for it, I'm like, man, that's true passion right there. And that's so hard to come by, right? And that's not a knock on anybody getting paid. I mean, obviously we all have bills, but like, man, when anybody's doing anything for free, it's because they truly love it. And that's what I love to see, And I mean, I told you this before, like the podcast is something I'm working to find a way to monetize it in the right way. But I do it because I love it. I love having these conversations. I love learning more about different projects and what they're doing. And I love having conversations that are not even NFT related. I just love having conversations in general and learning, because I'm a big believer, like we all should be learning all the time, right? But it's really cool to see what you guys are doing, and I'm looking forward to, a year from now having you back on the podcast. I'm sure you'll come on before then, but like talking about where things have gone from now, right? Like what you guys have learned from where things are at right now to the next time you're on here or whatever. There's going to be so much, because you guys have already changed and adapted in so many different ways, and that we're talking about this structure was back in August, So it's going to be really cool to see where it is a year from now and things like that. But I think the approach that you guys are taking is really, really just interesting, and it's cool, I think, for other people to learn based off what you guys are doing, and see if if their DAO wants to implement certain things that you guys are doing and everything like that. But it's just a very cool setup, something I've never heard before.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm definitely always happy to talk like everything around DAOs and governance and the ways this work. And the biggest thing is that these are constantly evolving systems, right? Like there's no way that you're going to just get something right on the first try in anything, right? Like if you do, great, but that's probably luck, not skill. I would rather be in a situation where we can make mistakes and learn from them and continue forward, where it's like, I'm happy making small mistakes where we learn something from it and we improve, and we can take feedback, and the impassioned people that we have working at MonkeDAO are more than happy to give us feedback if they don't necessarily think we're going in the right direction on something. But I'd rather just continue this way of constant improvement in the ecosystem, where we can make sure that we're representing every single monkey constantly, right? And like that's the goal, is we want to make it so it's like, you hold a monkey, you like what MonkeDAO is doing, perfect, all right, we're going to keep working.
So you mentioned before we started the podcast that there's this separation essentially between what Solana Monkey business is and what the MonkeDAO is. So can you kind of explain, I guess, that dynamic?
Yeah, we might need a whole nother podcast for this. But so the easiest way to look at it is like the original development team and the people who are working on these things are, they're focused on SMB, the brand, the IP, right? We're focused on representing what we think the holders want, how we can provide, community advancement in the form of education, infrastructure improvements, tech stack improvements, everything around that, which work together in similar ways. And I think we're both aligned in, making monkeys very well known, making it so there's something that they're desirable, that people want, and a community that people want to be a part of. We're not necessarily working like hand in hand on every single thing because we're two separate teams, but we work together on the big things and making sure that we're pushing the same narrative forward on like promoting both brands at the same time and making sure that both things are working well together.
Does it create kind of like, I guess that's the hardest part for, I guess, people to understand, is that when you're buying a Solana monkey business, you are also buying the DAO essentially, right? Like you're buying access to the DAO. So by buying a Solana monkey, is that kind of the way that you break it down then? Is like by buying a Solana monkey business, you are buying into our DAO, like MonkeDAO, and that's like your membership card?
Yeah, like there's the same way where it's like there are tons of projects with DAOs, right? Like DGods, DJ Apes, Thugbirds, all have DAOs that are community-run organizations that are designed to help the people who are inside of the project. We just take that, I think, to a larger extreme where rather than, relying necessarily on the central organization, that, the DAA organization, Hatch Labs now for Thugbirds and Dust Labs for DGods, we're trying to make it so that we have a ton of benefit for holders and for people who want to participate in governance, whether that's connections, whether that's events, whether anything that we want to make sure that we're not relying on the central organization to make those decisions or to provide that value. We want to make sure that's like, okay, you hold an SMB, you want something, let's make that happen. How can we do that? And that goes from everything to answering rumors about organizing a Chick-fil-A buyout on Twitter from one of our community people, which meant that I had about 2 hours of reading what franchise law would be in the United States for a DAO-based corporation to something like Monkey Realm that we have that's upcoming, which is just like there was someone made a meme in Discord where it's just like, oh, it'd be great if we had Monkey Realm so that we could go get drunk at another event. And I was like, oh, well, what did that look like? And now we have a barrel coming from Madeira that's hitting the shores in Florida, I think sometime this week. And we'll be doing a bunch of promotional stuff around that in the near future of just like, I would rather, it's a bunch of stuff that I think on the surface, people might necessarily think is like small or doesn't matter. And it's the same thing of what I think we were talking through with DGods, where they're doing their purchase of the big three team. But proving what you can actually do as a DAO and as a group of people and not just like a shadowy corporation, I think is one of the biggest things that you can take back to people. It's like, this stuff is not necessarily hard in terms of doing it, right? A lot of the stuff is difficult or obfuscated in execution in the way that you actually need to proceed and organize. But it's like, if you have talented people who have some level of subject expertise, a lot of this shit is pretty easy to do. It's just organizing people so that they feel like A, you're listening to them, and B, you have the proper methods of, okay, is this a funny idea, or is this something that we should actually be pursuing? Is this something that gets broad community sentiment that's positive, versus is this something that people are actually going to vote for? If we're just like, okay, this is what it would take to go from idea to proposal to execution. At that point, when we break it down for a lot of people, and not necessarily every proposal in MonkeDAO passes. There's plenty of things that don't make it off the drawing board, but we want to make it where it's just like, okay, this is an idea, this is how we'd execute it. Do we go through? Yes or no? And that's what people are voting on. That's what I think a lot of people really like inside of the DAO is like, they feel like their voices are being heard, and not even necessarily that they need to care about every single thing that MonkeDAO is doing. We want to make it so that when people have something that they do care about, they're valued.
So if somebody, each project kind of has their own like elevator pitch, right? Like if you're trying to get somebody, obviously not financial advice, but if somebody is like, hey, why should I buy such and such, right? What is your elevator pitch to somebody who says maybe they've seen some of the drama on Twitter sometimes, or maybe they don't completely understand the structure of things? And obviously I'm hoping people after listening to this podcast understand the structure of things and kind of how you guys have gotten to the point that you're at right now. But what would you say your elevator pitch is to somebody to get them to understand exactly what you guys are doing and why they should buy an SMB right now? Like what's going to take it to 600 floor, 1,000 floor? We were talking about that earlier. Like we need to see that in Solana. So what is it that, I guess, what's your elevator pitch for somebody to buy right now?
Yeah, so the easiest way is like you can go through all of the different infrastructure things that people are organizing, which is is fun for the people who are building in the ecosystem, but boring for other people, right? You can go through all the connections that you're going to make inside of MonkeDAO with top project founders or VCs or people who are involved in the ecosystem. You know, MonkeDAO acts as an incubator where we don't take a cut out of anything. There's 400 or 500 projects that have been launched from MonkeDAO, specifically in NFT projects in Solana and on other chains. What we're trying to do is we want to take 5,000 monkeys. We want to get the best and brightest people in the Solana ecosystem and in other chains. And we want to make one central community where people are not working on monkey stuff. People are working on their own things, coming together, communicating, figuring out what they need to do, building the next cool thing. And at that point, floor price doesn't matter because you're like Boogles where there's none that are available to sell, right? I want to get to the point where there is no floor price because you just can't buy a monkey because there's 5,000 that are not available for sale.
That'd be a flex and a half.
That would be perfect. Like that's what I want to do is like, I want it to be this community where it's just like such a fight to get into, where it's like you need to prove that you have some value to the other people that are organizing. It's not just, okay, do I have enough soul to buy that off the floor? What that actually takes to get to that point is like, we need to launch a ton of cool shit. We need to help prove a bunch of things inside of the ecosystem that we can A, help onboard people onto Solana, and then B, help onboard those people into MonkeDAO and prove to them is like, you're going to come here, you're going to learn a ton of stuff, you're going to meet a ton of people, and you're going to be able to build whatever you want because you're going to have the opportunity and the access to do it. Those aren't unique to MonkeDAO, but we are going to do that so fucking well that no one else is going to want to go anywhere else. And that's what we're trying to do inside of SMB. And so with people who are buying it at, 200 SOL and they're like, I just want to make a quick 2x. It's like, perfect. Just hold your monkey until someone else wants it more than you do, and you're going to make money. But I'm trying to make it so that MonkeDAO is the best place on Solana. Full stop.
Bang. That's an elevator pitch right there. I mean, hey, that's a great elevator pitch.
Need more coffee.
Not financial. Oh yeah, actually, that's a plug. Here, we'll do this simple plug. Okay, so give the live review. Somebody tweeted at me earlier today and was like, hey, can anybody give a review of Roast Umber Coffee? So can you give a review of Roast Umber Coffee? For anybody who doesn't know, that's a coffee company that I co-founded. If you're watching this podcast, you probably heard there's a video that plays at the beginning of it, talks about it. But can you give a live review? How is it?
Is this sponsored by Roast Umber Coffee?
This is sponsored by, yeah. Oh yeah.
So I drink a lot of caffeine in order to I travel a ton. I'm around a lot. I really love cold brew. I don't understand the mechanics of it. My brother's a brilliant person in terms of just being able to organize it. I just like drinking and consuming it. Tastes great. I've been feeling energized. I've been happy to talk this entire time. It doesn't have a bite. This is just a good thing to drink.
There we go.
I'm a fan.
There we go. And he wasn't even paid to say that, guys.
I'm interested in buying more when there's like an NFT drop. Is this something we can give to monkeys? What's going on here?
We're trying to do, that was one of the biggest things when I was talking to my co-founders about, Web3 and whatnot. I was like, dude, I want to find ways to involve, what we're doing with Web3, because I think that's one of the, that's where, to me, that's like what innovation is all about, is like finding a way to get, certain things to work with, to take your company and get it involved with Web3 in some different way, right? So we're trying to figure out what that looks like. I don't have that answer yet, but we're open to any and all ideas. That's the biggest thing. It's like with anything, with the podcast, with the coffee company, with everything, I'm trying to find more ways to involve Web3, because we talked about this before the podcast started too, but the community aspect of things is one thing that no one understands until you get into NFTs, and it's so real. And I've seen so many people who've gone and purchased my coffee, and that's what, that's where I was like, damn, it's not about pumping my bags. We put all of our profits right back into the business, but it's about seeing how many people have been like, oh, I fuck with the podcast, I'm going to buy Marc's coffee. That's the cool part about the community aspect of this. And so if we can find more ways to integrate into Web3, of course, we're open to any and all ideas.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily, one of the things that we go through is not necessarily everything needs to be like you don't need to have a hoodie on chain as an NFT drop, right? It's kind of cool if it is.
Yeah.
It's awesome if you can trade that. There's a bunch of sneaker companies like End State that do the similar thing where it's like merchandise on chain that you're allowed to buy and sell, anything around that. I was super inspired by the DAA beer that I've had the chance to try out, where it's just it's something that a community member created that you branded, put out as now is going to be this official thing that you can buy online. It's that's awesome, because that's purely just a community made thing that is taking in, the benefits of the NFT ecosystem, is taking the benefits of these communities, but they're not just selling passes to a beer drop on chain, right? They're trying to make actual products that people are going to interact with. I think there's, I was at a conference and I was listening to the amount of people who are shilling time chairs as NFTs, right? And it's okay, so instead of buying signing a contract. I just go buy the NFT and I still get hit with all the fees and all the different management costs and everything around that. It's like, that's not a better version of what we already have. You're using new technology for the exact same thing, right? It's like building a robot horse rather than a car. It's like, you can do it. It's not necessarily the best thing. And so, yeah, like one of the things that we're trying to work through and trying to work with a couple of ecosystem partners that I can't, leak right now, but I think people are going to be excited about is I want to take, the NFT product experience and stuff that people are, maybe anticipating, but take it so that, do you want to have like a perp price on something like MarginFi where it's like you're trading the price of roast umber coffee in terms of like buy crate? And it's like, maybe that's not the perfect implementation of that, but it's like, we're at the point where we can spin up something like that in 2 to 3 minutes with a pricing oracle and a couple of APIs. It's like all of that is awesome. And what needs to happen is like, you just need to have people who are continuing to build proper building blocks. Build building blocks is a terrible statement. I don't even know why I'm putting that out. You just need people who are like putting the next steps so that people can build something that no one here has any idea around, because no one thought NFTs were going to blow up and become massive, right? Like realistically 4 years ago, like the original Punks holders were, God bless them, because they helped bring a lot of this mainstream and, put the value of like generative PFP art as something that people were going to go through. We're not going to understand what this technology is going to be used for in 2 years. And maybe there's someone out there who has the foresight to be able to see it, but I don't think that I'm that person. I don't think that many people are that. Like the big picture ideas things is something that's just people are going to come up with. It's going to blow everyone away, right? And so what I want to do is I want to work with a bunch of people who have ideas and want to build something that's going to be productive for the ecosystem right now that can act as a composable building block for someone else to use later on. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's what like some of our monkeys who are running Mountain Pay, which is going to be like this next gen payment processing like protocol for people to actually interact with Solana in a decent way. It's like, when can I buy roast umber coffee with Solana? It's like, well, that turns into when can I buy anything with Solana? When do we improve like the Solana Pay infrastructure and everything going around that? That's what I think is a lot more exciting to work on rather than just like current thing that makes my NFT worth more money, which there's more than enough things around that. Like there's more than enough people who are promising to make you, a millionaire based on holding the NFT. And that's great. And most of them are incorrect. Some of them are going to work out, and I think maybe that's coming from a position of privilege from being the monkeys who have already had an incredible run up both in SOL and dollar price. But I think it serves our current holders and our current people a lot better to be like, okay, we want to be at the forefront of building all of these next iterations rather than trying to chase the current things that people are working on.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's a similar way that we approach roast umber is like there's so many coffee companies out there, right? And so it's like, what are you guys doing different, versus everybody else, right? And so we're just obviously we put a ton of time in our roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan is incredible. We have great farmers in Honduras and Guatemala, and so we do everything that we can to make the coffee the best coffee humanly possible. And we're always looking for the next batch of coffee to be better than the previous batch, right? But and that's where when it comes to Web3, we just want to be open to any and all ideas to grow the business in a unique way and make it so that we can just truly innovate, because coffee in itself, you're not innovating that much. Coffee's been around for such a long time. It's a massive commodity. And so, but in terms of how a business is structured and how a coffee company, looks publicly and everything like that, and how it interacts with Web3, that all can change. Like we can do so much with Web3, and that's what we're just, to be honest, like we're open to any and all ideas because there's so many creative people in this space. And that's my favorite part about the NFT space in general is there's so many people who will come up with something where you're like, dude, I've never thought about that. And you put, maybe 10 minutes of thought into it and boom, that idea just came to you. There's just so many super creative people. And that's definitely my favorite part about this space is that I'm a big fan of like, you shouldn't just be like pushing your project or pushing your company or whatever. You should be trying to support the whole ecosystem and everything like that. And so I love random conversations with projects where like, I don't have a Solana monkey business, but I want you guys to do well because it's good for the space, right? And when people are suggesting different ideas, whether it helps you or not to suggest an idea, you always should, because it's good for the space, for us to be supporting each other, coming up with ideas, and then, and then growing the space in itself. Because if we want to see the space continue to grow, then we need innovation to continue, and we need people to do well, right? So I'm all about just like supporting each other, throwing random ideas out there. Like if somebody has an idea for my podcast, by all means, slide in my DMs and tell me it. And like whether I agree with it or not is a whole nother thing. But like either way, I'd love to hear the idea, and maybe it is something that I implement the next episode, right? And that's what's great about this whole space in general, is that a shit ton of people who are super, super creative and innovating at all times. And like that's what it's all about.
Yeah, like one of the first software companies that I worked for was focused specifically on like company-based ideation. So it was just like, okay, you have 2,000 people who work for a company, right? All of them probably have ideas about what the company should be doing, but some of them have great ideas that you want to like make sure that those are being taken advantage of and, being improved. So we essentially just worked on like research and analytics on ways of just like getting people to engage with idea formation and then reporting that back as like a middleman for a lot of these companies, right? It's like you go out, you talk to another organization, and then they figure out what the ideas that are inside of your organization and then report that back to you. And that was an unnecessary like structure that didn't need to exist, but that was something that was one of the first companies that I worked for. It taught me a lot about software development, the way that we could interact with customer bases, and the importance of just like listening to as many people as possible. And it's like, I think that's where DAOs and NFT projects, and specifically like a lot of these different online communities, not just in, whatever the next big NFT comes by, or whatever the next big corporate comes by, or whatever another DeFi protocol comes by. It's like, I think there's already such a bloated ecosystem right now of just like advisors or consultants or outside research firms or any around these people whose entire jobs to tell you shit that you should already know, because you're just not doing a good job of listening to your core basis. And that's what I want MonkeDAO to do a better job of, is the people inside of our community are brilliant. And that is a lot of it because we put a lot of effort early on into like, we want smart people in here. We want to attract more people who are going to continue to push the ecosystem forward, who are going to continue to be great people in the space. That's our core group. That's who we're targeting. That's who we want. So it's like, if we can remove all of this bullshit advisory consulting stuff, right? Like if we can just actually listen to people in the community, do what they're telling us to do, and move on that, we're already steps ahead, right? And that's the kind of the hurdles that we're going through, right? And the stumbles that we have made right now is just on the way that we're implementing what people are telling us and making sure that we're listening to the overall voice, not necessarily just the loudest voice, or not just necessarily the people who choose to respond to us in a certain way, or however we're taking feedback. We're actively working on making sure that what people actually want is what we're working on, what we're providing to people in the space, not just necessarily what people think they want or what people are just yelling about on Twitter, right? Like we don't want to do mini monkey as a next generative drop that people are doing, or we're not just going to be making sure that all monkeys are now emitting banana token for whatever reason to do in the other protocol. It's like, those are all things that we could do that would probably have some level of success, but that's not necessarily what we're trying to do. And that's not necessarily, I think, what the broader holder adoption wants. They want that from their other projects. They want that from the things they're already invested in. They made an investment in other projects because of those tokenomics or those styles of things. What I think we can do really well for MonkeDAO and for the SMB holders is just to continue to provide this really strong community where people can come to for education, influence, improving their social connections, improving their infrastructure, everything around that.
All right, real quick, I got to interrupt this episode of the podcast to tell you guys about a new sponsor. Now, before you call me a sellout, I promise you I'm not doing that. I'm not ruining the integrity of the show. I'm not just accepting any sponsorship opportunity. I'm not doing that. I actually reached out to this company, and this company is called Hey Wallet. And I reached out to them because somebody had actually used Hey Wallet to send me Solana. And so when they did that, I was like, what is Hey Wallet? I'm not familiar with them. How does this work? Everything like that. Basically, Hey Wallet is a way that you can send somebody cryptocurrency without knowing their wallet address. All you have to know is their Twitter username. So, for example, if you're watching this podcast and you're like, oh my God, this is the most amazing podcast I've ever seen, I want to send Marc 1,000 Solana. What you would do is you would create an account on Hey Wallet. You would load it just like any other wallet. And then you would tweet, Hey Wallet, send Marc Colcer 1,000 Solana. And boom, I get 1,000 Solana. And so immediately there's a transaction on Twitter, which you get to see, and then there's also a receipt for that, and it goes up right on SoulScan. So you can basically see everything with the whole transaction right then and there. And that's one of the coolest parts about Hey Wallet is that there's the social element to cryptocurrency. And that's what I thought was really, really cool about it, because Twitter is such an important thing for the Solana space. And one of the big things I talk about all the time is onboarding people into the space. And so what easier way to do that but than by saying to somebody, hey, get onto Twitter, I'm going to send you Solana through Hey Wallet, and boom, now you're ready to go. You're ready to buy NFTs. You're ready to do this. You're ready to do that. And actually, one of the new features of Hey Wallet is that you can actually send NFTs back and forth through Hey Wallet. So it's just a really easy way to transact, and it's an easy way to send somebody Solana without having to ask them for their wallet address or anything like that. So if you want to show appreciation to somebody, like I said, hey, if you're watching this podcast, you're like, this is the most amazing podcast ever, and you want to send me Solana, all you got to do is go Hey Wallet, send Marc Colcer 1,000 Solana, and bang. I'll retweet that. I'll quote tweet that. I'll do the whole nine. So that's the new sponsor of the podcast. So I want you guys to show some love to Hey Wallet. We're going to be doing some really cool giveaways, doing some really cool contests and things like that, because I'm all about onboarding new people into the space, about giving back to people in the space. And that's what I talked about with Hey Wallet. And that's why I agreed to work with them, is because they're all about that too. And so, yeah, that's why I brought Hey Wallet into the podcast, and I'm looking forward to working with them. And now back to the episode. So you guys are doing things in such an interesting way, where you guys are listening to the feedback of your community members and constantly innovating and everything like that. As a result of that, how do you think other projects should learn from what you guys are doing? Because I would assume a lot of you guys hold many other projects, but most projects are very different from how you guys run things. So what would you kind of hope that other projects would learn from what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was we had what I would call DAO meta in September to early October, where every project added a DAO, which was essentially a way for a lot of project leadership to just delegate responsibilities onto a community that were unpaid, which was the opposite of kind of what we were wanting. A lot of people saw MonkeDAO and they're like, oh, perfect. If I make a DAO, then my project price go up. And that didn't work out, and that wasn't the case, because you didn't necessarily have the community sentiment, or you didn't necessarily have the people who were willing to put in the time. And that was an issue. Some projects do, and some people have those DAOs and they're successful and they're useful. But a lot of, DAOs didn't work. And I don't want people to be like, okay, if I want to be like SAB, I'm going to make a DAO, I'm going to empower my community. Because a lot of people just want to buy a project and see the project do well. They buy because they believe in a founder or they believe in a vision. And they say, okay, I'm going to put my money here and I'm going to go do my other thing, or I'm going to go work my job, or I'm going to invest somewhere else. What I think people should learn from, SMB and MonkeDAO is that it's important to have a vision and execute it, but be able to adapt to feedback consistently. Like, we had an idea of what we thought MonkeDAO was going to be, and that hasn't turned into what people have wanted and how it's been, proceeding. I think if you can do it in a way where you have a vision as a project founder, right? You want to do whatever your thing is. You want to make the next Bored Apes. You want to make the next OK Bears. You want to do whatever it is, right? Like, you have a vision. Make it so that you can still listen to the people who are a part of your community. Build the feedback channels so that you're not just listening to someone who's complaining in Discord because of a price or a decision that you're not, that they don't agree with. Because if you're making the decision or the right decision 90% of the time, 10% of the time people are going to just argue with you or disagree with you, or maybe you're wrong, right? But it's like, you can't listen to someone every single time that you do anything, because then you're not backing yourself. It's like, it's important to have a core vision, execute on it, but just build the mechanism of feedback where people feel like they are being valued and they are being listened to. And you don't necessarily have to take that feedback. You can take a lot of it and be like, awesome, thanks for your time. I'm going to put it in a box. I'm never going to look at it again. But you still have to listen to people. You still have to engage with people. We were talking about this earlier, where you were trying to get in touch with a couple of project founders who just like refused to respond to any of your messages or any of your DMs. And you're just like, you couldn't get a hold of them. It was like, that is the most negative thing possible, where it's like, we talk so much about like interconnectivity and the way that like this community all works together and people listen to it. It's like, if you don't have the time to like at least respond to someone, talk to them, hear them out, listen to their frustration, like give them a little bit of a platform to talk to, like, what are you doing? Like, if you don't want to engage with your community, if you don't want to listen to your community, that's fine, but don't expect to have a community, right? Like that's what I think people should learn is you can still have your vision, you can still execute and iterate on it, but you just need to talk to people, and you just need to make sure that they feel like, okay, maybe Nam isn't going to do what I'm saying, but I can go and I can chat with Nam in his DMs anytime that I want to, or I can go talk to him on a Twitter space, or I can go talk to him in Discord. It's like just that small little mentality difference is where I see a lot of projects fall over and honestly fail, because if you don't have a community narrative, you don't have people believing in you, there's no point.
Yeah, and I know projects get a ass ton of DMs and everything like that. So I can only imagine the project founders, all their DMs and everything like that. But I think it's really important for projects to voice things, like to learn from them. And I think that's what we've seen in the podcast so far is Frank coming on from the D Gods, and then Hex coming on from Soul Gods, and then OX coming on from Solana Money Boys, and then you coming on and talking about what you guys are doing. People love being able to look at a project and then say, okay, and I've heard that project talk, and I've heard them communicate directly with me as either a holder or a potential holder, and I now feel that much more confident in holding that bag, especially during a time like we're going through right now where shit's kind of hitting the fan today. It is things are not going so hot right now. Yeah. So it's important for people to then feel confidence in that project founder, not losing their drive when if Solana, dips 50%, like you want to believe that project founder or the DAO or whoever's involved with making those decisions is going to lead that project throughout whatever we're dealing with at the time, right? And so I'm just a big believer of you gotta come up with a way where you can communicate directly with your audience and hear what they're saying and provide feedback and provide that communication, because that's what it's all about. I think that's why we see a lot of projects dump at certain times, because the communication aspect of things just gets fucked up from time to time. And yet that's all what we're looking for is proper communication. We're all just trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening. Are you hearing what we're saying? And I think that's half the battle right there is like, are you hearing me? Right. And so the gripe that I had earlier that we were talking about was I had reached out to a project about coming onto the podcast, and they were responding to everybody else on Twitter except for me. And I was like, damn it, even if the answer is no, just I would like to hear back. And it was a project that I hold. And so I was like, damn, like I would just like to know as a holder that you're at least thinking about it. And like, once again, even if the answer is like, hey, right now I don't think is the right time, I still would like that communication when you're communicating back with everybody but me. So that's the biggest thing I think for projects is finding that right communication style and finding the right way to create that communication mechanism where you're able to talk to your audience and able to get proper feedback from them, and then you decide from there what you want to do and everything like that. Obviously, like nobody has to come on to the podcast and everything, but none of these project founders have to do anything, but it's good to hear back from your community, and it's good to hear back from people in the space, and then figure out from there what you want to do.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, right? Where it's like, I don't care how important you are. Like one of the things that like we have for new board members is like people specifically don't necessarily want to use Twitter as their like preferred method of communication, but it's like everyone just kind of gradually ends up on different communication platforms just as a way to like chat with people and have honest conversations. And one of our board members is a brilliant securities lawyer, and every time that I just now see him randomly shitpost on Discord or on Twitter just because he's excited, or he's just like has a thought that he wants to put out, is like, that is a behavior mechanism that did not exist before SMB or MonkeDAO and is now just a part of just like he wants to be a part of the ecosystem. And so it get to the point where it's like, regardless of how busy you are, how big you're following or anything around that, like you should be, people are taking the time to reach out and talk to you. Like people have an opinion on what you're doing. You don't have to agree with them. You don't even have to like talk through that. But if someone is trying to reach you, like I think you owe it to people to talk to them more than anything else. I don't think that you can exist on one of these online platforms and like not engage with people who are trying to talk to you. If someone's just like harassing you or giving you shit or whatever, that's what the block button is for. Get rid of them. Like that's not what I'm saying. But like when someone's trying to have an honest discourse with you and you're putting yourself on an online social media platform, you're there to talk to people. If you're just choosing like, I don't want to engage this because it would be bad for my brand or my narrative or anything around that, I think that's a waste. Like, and to be honest with you, like that's something we're still battling with, like the MonkeDAO Twitter account, for example. I am in there constantly trying to answer a ton of DMs and talk to people directly and make sure that their voices are being heard. But I think it's a consistent battle where you need someone whose job is to just talk to people who are interested in your thing. And that's a lot harder probably when you're a smaller project and your goal is to get people interested in what you're trying to do rather than an existing project with an existing following or some level of basis on that people know what's going on. But I think one of the ways that you can always separate yourself from the pack is just like, if you are consistently there talking to people, making yourself available, and just like having good, honest conversations, that's half the battle right there. And that's what a lot of projects fail at doing right now, despite their current success.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an important thing. People enjoy good people, right? So if someone's willing to make the time to have a conversation with you, and I also understand, like, you know, I'm sure your DMs get blown up, my DMs get blown up. I know sometimes it can take a second to get back to things, and that's fine. Take your time, get back to things when you can, but you should always be open to conversation. Like you mentioned, it's like so unbelievably important to just be open to that conversation in general. And that's how we grow. That's how we learn. You know, that's how MonkeDAO structure is going to be that much better a year from now, just as my podcast setup is going to be that much better a year from now, because we're all constantly trying to grow and learn. And that's what we should do. And in order to do that, you need to be open to other people's ideas. You know, we're not expected to know everything and to come up with every genius idea. That's just not possible. So you have to be open to other people's ideas, or otherwise you're going to miss out on things that would help you.
Yeah, if I ever get to a point where I think that I can't learn from someone, or that talking to someone is not worth my time, just sell everything, go to zero. Like if you're at a point where you think you don't have anything to learn, especially in a space like this where it's new enough, and like we say, like crypto's new, it's 12 years old, right? Realistically, in terms of like what most people think of it as the adoption cycle, but like most people in this space are not experts, and it is very, very difficult to actually be an expert on this space just because stuff hasn't been around long enough. Like Vitalik, sure. Other than that, like, are you really going to be telling me that there's any experts on cryptocurrency in any way, shape, or form? Like, you have areas of expertise. There are still a ton of things that you can actually learn from consistently. So if you just blow off a conversation with someone, you don't actually know what their background is. You don't know what they're able to provide for you. And they might just be something where you have that aha moment of, oh, this makes sense. I can learn from this, or I can work from this. I don't even necessarily need to do whatever they're saying. It just might cause you to think in a certain way. It's like, I can't imagine being on the internet, this mechanism for you to be able to access information to people in any way, shape, or form, and like be able to discover anything, and just think that talking to someone would not be worth your time. Like, I just can't imagine that. I think that's one of the best things that we can do, is just consistently engage with people and talk to them and make sure that, you know, if there is something that I can learn, I'm learning from it. If there isn't something that I can learn, sure, whatever, fine, move on. But like, try to talk to people, try to engage with them, try to improve.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So, okay, so typically when I have somebody on here, we're talking about their project and everything like that, and so they're able to kind of freely drop alpha, right? Yeah, so is there anything that you can drop in terms of, like, I know obviously there's more decision makers in MonkeDAO, but is there anything that you can drop that's not going to get you killed by everybody else?
In terms of, so this is a big thing, is like, I don't actually know, like, we're working a ton on our outbound messaging system and our marketing and the ways that we're putting stuff out. So like, we just launched new branding. Awesome. We launched a version 1 of our token draft, which we went out to the community. We were excited. It was just like, what would a governance token for MonkeDAO look like? How would it have utilities? You know, what were people looking for? And we got a ton of great feedback around that. Right now, we put it back to our full structuring committee, which is, you know, 20 monkeys who are giving their opinions on, you know, based on their experience in venture capitalism and tokenomics and design systems, what they think they can improve on that. So we're like, you know, I would like to say that everything in MonkeDAO doesn't leak to the public, but I'm pretty sure that it does in some way, shape, or form. So I think that'll be coming out a little bit. Maybe not. I don't know when the podcast is going to come out, because
tomorrow.
This isn't live. I don't know. So when this comes out, like, it'll probably be the same week where more information.
Oh, it's coming out tomorrow.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, we're coming out tomorrow.
I thought you were.
No, it's legit coming out tomorrow.
All right, then later this week you should be seeing something around our updated tokenomics and the way that we're going to be releasing the monkey token, ways that I think people would be able to enjoy it and interface with it in the project. We're actively working on planning a ton of massive events around the world. So we're trying to have, you know, 12 events in the next 3 months across 3 continents, going forward into kind of our like anniversary of 1 year of SMB in the MonkeDAO, which we are making sure, you know, at least some portion of those are going to be open to non-monkeys, just as a way to, like, you want to come in and meet the community that we talk so much about, but maybe you don't necessarily have the best way to do it. Show up to one of these events. It'll be great. You'll actually get a chance to, like, converse with all these people and talk around that. In terms of like alpha, for what I'm dropping, I don't know that I have too many spicy things that I'm allowed to. What I can say is probably the second biggest source of conversation that people are going through to specifically date it right now. People are asking if there's going to be a buyout of the SMB developers and their IP. What we can say is what I've said before publicly on our town hall, which is weekly at 5:00 on Fridays for anybody, or weekly at 12 p.m. on Fridays for anyone who might want to join if you're a monkey holder. Or we release a recording so that people are able to check it out later on throughout the day. But we have had several interested parties who are looking to buy the SMB IP from the original developers. We understand that like discussing any details of that deal changes the course of that deal, and we're not interested in messing up anything that could potentially be beneficial to monkey holders if a deal was going to go through. We're in conversations with those buyers and the SMB teams to make sure that we are representing, the MonkeDAO brand and also the SMB holders as a community for things that we can plan further down the line, so that anything that we're working on isn't going to go against what those potential buyers are looking for. And when we have more information in that deal, if it goes forward or if it is going to happen, we're going to make sure that we share it in an essential way. There's a lot of people talking about the things that, Yuga Labs will buy SMB. Don't have information on that. There's a lot of people who are asking about other potential buyers. I would love to have information to leak on the podcast for live alpha, but right now, I just don't have that information in order to share it. And, I would love to continue to work with the current SMB team. I think that they have created, this incredible brand, and I think that whoever ends up holding the license, which I would love for all MonkeDAO members to be the people who end up holding that responsibility and, the IP where they can do everything related to monkey, not just, the things related to their monkey. That's just going to see how it plays out more than anything else.
Yeah, there we go. So, okay, so plug your socials real quick. Where can people find you?
So the easiest one, monkedao.io is the website. It has all of our, different information, ways that we're doing it, including our wonderful new rebranding that I will continue to plug because it looks way too good. You can find us on Twitter at MonkeDAO or discord.gg/MonkeDAO. Myself, I'm the only nom on Twitter, Telegram, and nom on Discord. Always happy to talk, anything related to governance, community, NFTs, crypto in general. I just love the space. I'm always happy to chat as much as possible.
There we go. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on, and I think this will really help people understand what Solana Monkey Business is all about, what the MonkeDAO is all about, how the history of it kind of came to be and everything like that, because I do think it's something that a lot of people, especially people who are not in MonkeDAO, don't completely understand. So I hope this simplified things for people a bit, and I'm looking forward to seeing where things go for you guys, because once again, your setup of how you're doing everything is so interesting and so unique, and I think there's so much that everybody can learn from that. So I'm very curious to I know you'll be back on at some point. We'll be talking about, how certain things played out and things like that. If you guys do roll out a token at some point, how that, how the process of that token was created and how people reacted to it and everything like that. I think all of that is going to be super, super interesting. And if you guys do end up having somebody who buys out the developers, like how that process is going to look, and either way, it's like all of this is just so interesting that the MonkeDAO has such an important role in how everything plays out. And so I hope this explained everything for people, and I appreciate you coming on and having this conversation.
Yeah, like my biggest thing is like the product that we're trying to sell with SMB, right, is the people in the community. That's our core value proposition. That's the things that we're looking to give to people as a way of just like, this is how you get in contact with people. This is how we do it. And we need to do a better job of coming on to things like this and talking more about it, because, we spend so much time sometimes just like internally trying to work on our processes and perfect things and talk to those people that sometimes we forget to go on and market it. We have an incredible marketing team, which I do not have full control over anymore because I did not do the best job of marketing the brand or the organization that are just going to do a great job of making sure that we have a lot of spokesmonkeys who can go out and talk to these different podcasts and these different media. And I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to talking more. I travel a lot, and I'm looking forward to being back in LA Maybe when traffic's solved, if that's ever happened. If you know someone that I can talk to about that, that would be great.
Hey, if you guys can solve government issues first, and then you guys can solve traffic. I mean, hey, you guys are.
That's infrastructure, right? Like it's perfectly on brand. How hard could it be?
Yeah. You guys can easily solve that. I have no doubt. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys solve all those problems. But no, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate everybody listening. And yeah, man. I'm looking forward to seeing the feedback, and I hope this once again explained everything for everybody. But once again, appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. Always a pleasure.
There we go. See you guys.